Hello. Hello. A very, very, very good morning. And it's just so amazing to be in a room with such vibrant energy. And I know people are still chatting there, but I had to get started because we've such a busy, busy day. You are all so very welcome to the Gibson Hotel. And just as I stand here, I just have this sense of huge gratitude that I am here today. And on that note, can I just say thank you to Raphael and the incredible team at the Gibson Hotel who've been so kind with tea and coffee. I don't know if you can hear us, Raphael, but we might give them a little round of applause. And I'm just going to take a moment. It's been a very, very busy morning. It's incredible to see so many familiar faces and lovely smiles and great conversation. But I think, from myself anyway, I'm going to invite you maybe just to take a collective breath. I need it. And I just want to allow myself to arrive and be really present in this moment, be present to the wonderful day ahead, and be present to each other and be present to the celebration that we're about to unpack. It feels like a present. You know, when you give a gift, everything you feel is just gratitude. Before we officially start, a little bit of housekeeping. My name is Andrea Hayes. I was part of, like you all, we all went through the MA programme, but I have to do a little bit of housekeeping. In the very unlikely event that we have to leave the room, we see the doors that you entered into. We will just slowly go through those doors and follow the Gibson team. Raphael and the team will tell us what we need to do. Also, you probably noticed that we have 3 cameras. Or we have a locked off camera there. Sean has the camera there, and there's cameras behind us. So it is being recorded. The event is being recorded today. But if you want to take out your phone for any reason, you might put it on flight mode. I know people like to take photographs, or if it's on now, you might just attend to that now and maybe switch it off. But if you are capturing any of the lovely moments today, or maybe you took some photographs outside with your friends, if you're sharing on social media, we'd love that, because there's so many people that we would love to have here today, but they're spread all around the world. And if you're sharing any of the lovely moments from today, make sure, if you can, to tag Spire on social media. And we even have a hashtag. The hashtag, I think, is hashtag Spire25. So I know, is there anybody out there that's very good on the internet? They might get that going today. So please share all the lovely moments from today, and we'll be sure to do that as well. We're going to have such a lovely celebration. It's such a rich, busy morning. So without any delay, to officially kind of start our celebration, I want to invite onto the stage somebody that needs absolutely no introduction, and I will be talking to him later. Please give a very, very warm welcome to Dr. Michael O'Sullivan.
Many thanks, Andrea. Andrea, as you know, is our MC today, and she is, as she said, a graduate of the programme. She's also a Spire trustee, a spiritual director, an author, and so much more. So we're very fortunate to have such a good person looking after the day with us today. Okay, so today... Wow.
The spirit is here.
Right. Right, today is a day of great joy for us all, and I'm sure we're all feeling that, and it's wonderful to experience being together on this great occasion. We're celebrating 25 years of postgraduate studies in applied spirituality in this country, and work too by some of us beyond, to develop the discipline beyond Ireland through international leadership roles, organising and presenting at conferences, and through publications and so forth. International graduates have also been in contact to express regret at not being able to be here in person and to wish us a wonderful event. And that is what we're going to have. They wrote from Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, the Philippines, India, Pakistan, Myanmar, Kenya, Nigeria, the United States, Croatia, Sweden, and the UK. We remember too at this time other international graduates, those from China, South Korea, Bangladesh, Cameroon, Ghana, Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, France, Poland, Romania, Malta, Turkey and the Netherlands. Many of you will recall me saying at different times during the programme when we were together that there was a time when the disciplines of psychology and sociology did not exist as university disciplines and did not exist as professions. Now, of course, no university and no society would be without such subject areas and such disciplines. Today, we celebrate 25 years of applied spirituality as a university discipline and for the professions, and its fruits in our lives and throughout our society and beyond. So we've come a long way over the years, and all of you have helped to make that happen. But the journey over those 25 years has not been without its bumps in the road. Following the closure and sale of Milltown Institute, where postgraduate studies and awards began in 2001, and then All Hallows College, where they continued, Bernadette Flanagan, who I'm sure I don't need to say is Bernadette Flanagan, Bernadette and I, who had worked in applied spirituality in both of these higher education institutions, decided to found SPIRE. Now, SPIRE is the Spirituality Institute for Research and Education. We established it as an autonomous registered charity. And you can read afterwards in your leaflet. Every folder has a leaflet about SPIRE, which I'll draw your attention to, which you can read afterwards. And also we have our website. SPIRE now is an acronym. Sometimes people spell it as S-P-I-R-E, like the Spire in Dublin, but it's not SPIRE like that. It's an acronym because the reason why the spelling is as it is as follows, that capital S, small p in the name stands for spirituality. I stands for Institute, R for Research, E for Education. And also that spelling evokes Spirituality Ireland. In the same year that we started out with SPIRE, discussions began between SPIRE and what is now the South East Technological University to keep postgraduate studies, research dissemination, awards and leadership roles in applied spirituality going. A new MA programme document was produced to start this process, and it was defended successfully before an approval board set up for that purpose. As a result, in 2016, what was then Waterford Institute of Technology became the first and only institute of technology in this country to offer postgraduate studies in applied spirituality. And then after that, we went on beyond the MA research, then PhDs started to come along, and a research unit was set up. So it's continued to grow, these studies. All these studies are hosted and resourced by SPIRE in the Jesuit building, Milltown Park, in Dublin. And 2026, therefore, is also the 10th year of this very successful initiative between what is now SCTU, South East Technological University, and SPIRE. Because Bernadette and I are a leadership link across the 25 years of these studies and awards in the three institutions where they have taken place, we felt it would be lovely if SPIRE were to organise such an event, this event here today, to celebrate all that has happened and all that can still happen. We are delighted with the wonderful response to our initiative. You will find a leaflet, as I said, about SPIRE in your folders, but there's also the SPIRE website, and that can be viewed then at www.spiritualityinstitute.ie. So I'll now show just 3 images from the website, but please do research the site for yourself afterwards. There's a lot there. See in particular our unique online library catalogue, which is under the Resources tab on the website for Applied Spirituality Studies. There is a lot of other interesting information and resources available in the different places there on the website, and also in our social media. There are icons for our social media also on the website. Our social media posts tend to get a great many views. For example, the post on SPIRE's Facebook page about this event has reached already over 4,900 views. Now, on the website, just to pick out 1 or 2 things, this is the first part of the home page, and you just see it all there. And now the second part of that page, now down, if you could show that one. Yeah, that's the news page. So whenever we're having a news item or that, we put it on the page there, and you can see that the 25 years event here today is the first news item there, and then there are others as well. And then the next slide shows some of the research dissertation titles, and it gives people an idea of the reach and range of the work we're doing in this area of applied spirituality study at postgraduate level. Just to mention a few of the titles that are there, Karen O'Connor, for example, Spiritual Themes in Contemporary Women Authored Fiction. Ray Flaherty, Developing a Psychotherapist's Eco-Spiritual Self-Care Toolbox. Susanna Choi from South Korea, Spirituality of Migrants. And Rita Aung, Myanmar and the Philippines, Exploring Contemplative Dialogue between Theravada Buddhism and Catholicism in Myanmar. So those are just a few of the titles, but you can see from that like the range really of the kind of study we're doing in this area, in this subject area. Okay. So I leave it to yourselves to look at the website and see more, and recommend it. Thank you. Now, I want to hand you back to Andrea.
I will keep you on stage. If you want to take a seat over there. This is just a little transition now. So as we celebrate the 25 years, we've heard Michael talk about it, as we honour the vision, I want to it's going to be a 20-minute conversation. I could talk to these two people for probably hours, and maybe that will be another programme. But as we reflect on the beginnings, the milestones and the innovations, please welcome to the stage Dr. Bernadette Flanagan, Chair and Co-founder of Spire. And I have to mention again Dr. Michael O'Sullivan, Director, Treasurer and Co-founder of Spire. Give them both a big round of applause, please. I feel like I'm, getting my results or something like this. This is very intimidating. I'm so moved just even sitting here on the stage. I really am. And it's, for me, it's such a full circle moment to be here. And they always say your vibe attracts your tribe. Look at the tribe of people in this room. It's just so incredible. But I'm going to move you back, Bernadette, to the beginning. And tell us a little bit about how it started, because I believe there was a napkin. Even love was in the air. Have I been told correctly?
Okay, it's quite an amazing story about the lead into spirituality studies from which this program emerged. It goes back maybe about 40 years, and 4 senior gentlemen on the staff of the Milltown Institute, 2 Jesuits, Raymond Maloney and Billy Kelly, Sacred Heart. There's some Sacred Heart priests here today. Martin McNamara, who's still with us, and a Carmelite, Chris O'Donnell. So they decided that it had been a long time since Christmas and a long time since they had a chat, and they should go out for dinner. So they organised themselves to go out on the 14th of February and were wandering around town, totally puzzled that every restaurant seemed to be full. Was the country going mad? Why were they all out dining in the middle of the week? Eventually, they found a table and discovered it was Valentine's night, which wasn't on their calendar. So the conversation developed over the course of the night, and they were thinking about Milltown Institute and what new endeavour might be added to the curriculum. I see Una laughing there. She knows all these gentlemen. And they thought about their experience in Rome and the various institutions where they had studied in Rome and how spirituality was studied there. And it seemed to be a thing that might be of interest in Ireland. Through their different works, they knew that people were going to retreats wanting to learn about contemplative prayer and other realities. And so I love this piece because writing programs today is a long and complicated task. But back then, they pulled up a serviette, wrote the design of the program, and it was ready to run. That's all that was involved in running a program back then. So that eventually became known as the classical spirituality Studies program as an MA in classical Christian spirituality, very much focused on texts. Some people in the room here did it, and I did it myself as well. That's what was available in the 1990s. But I came to spirituality studies out of a kind of an applied teaching experience with experiences like having maths clubs for homeless girls in the inner city, maths clubs for women who had left school early and wanted to go on and assist their children with maths. So my friends were saying to me, and what use is that now, kind of thing, when you had that done? So the whole conversation about an applied dimension to spirituality. What has it got to do with the questions, with homelessness, which is some of the experience that I was connected with? What has it got to do with social concern? What has it got to do with addiction recovery and things like that? My friends were saying to me. And so the whole question of an applied spirituality came up. And I was really lucky to have colleagues, Dr. Una Agnew, who's here today, Dr. Jack Finnegan, who cannot be with us, and unfortunately he's very sad that he just hasn't the health to be here today, and Tom McGrath, Jesuit Tom McGrath, who sadly died early. So the four of us got together working on trying to design the first version of this programme. And as you said, Michael, there were bumps on the road. It did not get through a review panel straight away, and we had to go back and redesign it a second time. So that's the story, the start of the story at least. Thanks, Andrea.
I just love that. It really is, we're often told to see through the eyes of the heart, but to have it formed, or the genesis of it, on Valentine's Day just seems very, very appropriate. And Michael, I might ask you to share a little story, because there's a connection between yourself and Bernadette. I believe that she was on a corridor and you spotted her looking at something, and that kind of... Now, this is terrible. Where is your minds going to? Now, I'll have to get Michael to unpack that story. I'm really now, these weren't the approved questions. I'm just trying to get the context here.
Well, in mid-90s, I came on the faculty in Middletown Institute in 1986, and my specializations really were in liberation theology and feminist theology. And I was very anxious that these kinds of theologies would develop at a time when really the focus in theology was not so present there, at least not in Middletown Institute, or not in many other places as well. So I said, look, we'll have to offer a course in feminist theology. And, people said to me, well, who's going to teach it? And I said, actually, I've studied and have a great interest in it, and I believe in it passionately. Okay, they said, go for it, but we'll just only have it as an elective, at least to begin with. We won't have it in the core programme. Okay, I said, small beginnings, but maybe it'll get further. So I said I'd put up a notice on the notice board in Middletown, and people can sign up for it if they wish to do it as an elective course. And I was walking down the corridor one day, and I saw this young woman looking at this post, this notice board. And I went over and I said to her, "Are you interested in doing that course?" And she said to me, "I am. But what I want to know is, what is a man doing teaching that course?" As I say, we had to start somewhere. And I said to her, "I am that man."
I am that man. I just had to ask that story. But Michael, you might then go about the collaboration that yourself and Bernadette have shared, since you said, "I am that man." And she answered the call. Tell us a little bit about kind of the unfolding of it.
Right. Well, when I went into the class in the first morning, I looked around it nervously, saying, "I wonder, is she here?" And she was. I knew if I got through well with her in the class, I was fine, and I did, and that's how we've come to really over the years now. Bernadette felt, "Yeah, Michael, you did a good job there, we can work together." And so when the Applied Spirituality MA began, she asked me would I teach in that programme, and I said I'd be happy to do so. I was in the faculty of the Department of Systematic Theology and History at the time, and then when she's involved in setting up a new Department of Spirituality in Middletown Institute, she asked me would I join, because she needed some faculty to join the department. And I said, okay, I'm happy to do so. So I moved laterally into this new Department of Spirituality, and a few years after that, I became the Programme Director of the Applied Spirituality MA. And really, we've gone on from there.
Well, I'm going to just go back to you, Bernadette, because it sounds so simple. But I want to kind of remind us, what was the early programme? What kind of form did that take? Because it has changed a lot. So maybe bring us back to the vision at the beginning.
Yeah, the programme has changed a lot because it's had been accredited in different places. So it's with South East Technological University today. When it started off, it was an agency called the National Council for Educational Awards, which then evolved into the Higher Education and Training Awards Council. And then Milltown collaborated with the NUI, and the award became part of the NUI catalogue. So it's a programme that has been tried and retested and trimmed and everything so many times, because every place has different requirements. But in the beginning, it was very much, I suppose, influenced by the classical programme, in that there was an emphasis on classical texts. And then, but there were the contemporary elements that were being introduced as well, like the stages of life, that Una would have been involved in looking at spirituality across different stages of life. So there was an opportunity within the programme to begin to imagine what might be applied. Social concern, because Michael was available, took a high priority in the programme again. Now that was very much, I suppose, international social concern and local challenges. It has evolved now with Neve to include ecology as well. So, and then the arts and literature, but of course Paul looks after film now. So, you know, it has evolved over time. The seeds were there of what would be added later.
And Michael, I might bring you back to All Hallows. Was it around 2010? Am I getting my dates around?
You're right.
That's correct. And can you tell us about that journey, that transition that you mentioned, and then just the unfolding of the programme and the important decisions around the content and how this would take shape?
Right. Well, in Milltown, it was a 2-year MA programme. People had to do a HDIP or a postgraduate diploma year first before being able to go on to do an MA year. At that time, there was not much known about spirituality studies, and we felt we needed to have that first year just to give people some transition into MA level studies in this area. So that was a 2-year programme at the time. Then we went to All Hallows with Dublin City University, and the programme became a 1-year programme. So we had to rewrite the programme to be a 1-year programme with a new awarding body, Dublin City University, and that obviously called for certain changes. I think, for example, of Kieran O'Mahony, who's here, who used to teach biblical spirituality in the programme, and we had to say to Kieran, listen, Kieran, I'm sorry, but we'll have to take biblical spirituality out. We'll have to make a few cuts, and we'll have the Bible there somewhere, but we can't have a whole module on it anymore, and so on. So, yes, hi Kieran, there you are. Yeah, good. So there were further changes had to be made in the programme at that stage, and it was a 1-day-a-week programme at that stage. But if I may go on, that was 2010 into 2015. But then in 2015, All Hallows decided it had to close and sell as well. And so we now had to sort of offer the programme, if we could, somewhere else. And we were very fortunate that Michael Howlett, who's here, Michael was the head of the Department of Applied Arts, as it was then, and he showed great interest in having this programme with Waterford, and Richard Hayes was the head of the School of Humanities too, as well. So we were very fortunate with 2 very interesting people in this area who really thought this would benefit what was then an Institute of Technology to have such studies in it, which was very unusual, as I said at the beginning, because an Institute of Technology in Ireland, no Institute of Technology was running such a programme anywhere. And so we began that way. We had to rewrite the programme, we had to get it through an approval process, and now it had to be offered. We offered it differently. Instead of being a day a week, we offered it now in blocks of 3 days with a week at the start to get it going and get the class kind of connected with each other a bit better by having more time together at the beginning. And then we went to 3 days a month after that. So again, the programme was being delivered differently, and that too had its effects on how it was going to be formed and put together.
And I might just ask you, because some core models endured, but there were some changes. And I know like contemplative practice and research has been very important. Even about spiritual direction, I'm just going to weave that in, because you would have, spiritual direction was a huge part of it at one point, and now it isn't. But actually the literature in spiritual direction is very important. And even on a world stage, it's, you're really contributing to that conversation. You might talk about that, Bernadette.
Yes, as the years have gone by, certainly the research piece has become more prominent. Now, it can sound as if it's all becoming very abstract then, going down the research route. But one of the things that we have done as a team, and Noelia is here as the core leader now, is develop a contemplative approach to research. Today we're much more aware, writing as contemplative practice, walking as contemplative practice. Contemplative practice isn't confined to a special oratory or whatever it might be anymore. In the way that we approach reflectively, whatever the task of life is, cooking or making Lego or whatever it may be, it can become a contemplative practice. So that's the way we approach the research now. We kind of take the slow process of Lectio Divina and walk it through the research journey. So that's been a big change, and we've published about this, and I suppose this is one of the things that we've become distinguished for now, doing research in a contemplative way. So that has been an element of the programme that has developed more strongly as we have gone by. And then, as you mentioned, in the beginning we had one-to-one personal spiritual accompaniment, but in recent years not everybody will have had some experience of that when they come to the programme. So it can be a bit of a deep dive to jump into that straight away. So rather than offering that straight away, what we do is we look globally, what's happening? What are the forms of spiritual accompaniment that are available today, online and in person, of course, because of COVID? And what are the questions that are emerging as important questions, like spiritual accompaniment through the journey of addiction, spiritual accompaniment outdoors in green spaces? I know that's your special interest, Andre. So spiritual accompaniment is taking much more diverse forms and has new issues today. So we're looking at the literature globally, rather than doing the practice. And then if people are interested in that, they go on. And then Miles is here from Onum Corridus, which attracts so many graduates. Where are you over there, Miles? And other programs, and the Manresa program. So it's gone a different direction. They read about what's happening first, and then they have the opportunity to go on and train as spiritual accompaniment persons if they want to. Yeah.
And we'll be chatting a little bit more about that maybe with yourself, Noelia. But all of the change, Michael, organisations can be very fragile. And higher education has seen enormous change over the years. Is that why you formed Spire? Or can you tell us why Spire was formed in 2015?
Yeah, very good. Yes, Bernadette and I decided we needed to create an independent entity. With these institutions closing down, there was a risk that spirituality studies at postgraduate level was not going to happen anymore. So we said, look, we'll set up this independent entity. We established it as a registered charity, and then we were fortunate we were able to work with what was then WIT, later SCTU, to keep spirituality studies at a university level and for the professions going. So Spire then kind of is where now the SCTU programs and activities, the research and the various things, the research unit, a lot of the work is done in Dublin at the Spire Centre in Dublin, Milltown Park, the Jesuit Centre there. So we have a great collaboration going with SCTU and ourselves, and we're really pleased how that's worked out. We've had 10 years together now, and I think we were really fortunate in Michael and Richard, first of all, as the heads that they were of these school and department, and now the new heads that we have who are here today, Suzanne and Danielle. And we have been really impressed, haven't we, Bernie, with the hospitality, because there was a sense in which going into a public university there might be a bit of kind of really holding back on such a programme coming into the university. Well, we have been welcomed with open arms, and it's gone really well.
And just to kind of underscore how well it went, Michael, in the public institution, in 2023 there was a huge event that saw about the amount of people here, over 150 people, and a huge an international conference. You might just speak very briefly about that, because Because that was a huge celebration for Spire.
Yeah, you see, our work has gone beyond even the MA programme and onto PhD studies and establishing a research unit, but we're also involved very much at international level. You know, we've colleagues around the world now that we work with in different universities and organisations of that kind, and one of them is the International Network for the Study of Spirituality. And in 2023, this conference used to be held every 2 years in the UK somewhere, because it sort of originated there and tended to kind of continue to be held. The conferences continue to be held there. So I said, look, why don't we need to be an international network, because it started as the British Association, and then I was actually elected as an Irish person, which was, my God, I have an Irish person on the board now. I said, we've got to go more international. Then Brexit happened, which was great in that sense. I said, now we absolutely have to go international. And so the name was changed to International Network. And then, as I say, every 2 years it used to be held in the UK. I said, right, let's have it now for the first time outside the UK in 2023. And, you know, a great location would be this new university that's after starting in Waterford. It only came into being on the 1st of May 2022. I said this is a great opportunity to bring these kinds of conferences to this new university, and where there's already a lot going on in applied spirituality studies. So they agreed, they went with it, and we organised it. It was 150 delegates from 25 countries and 5 continents. And it was really the largest conference in spirituality studies ever held in Ireland. It really put SCTU on the map in regards to these kinds of studies, which too has been very good.
And it was incredible. And Bernadette's been very quiet here, but Bernadette has had so many significant leadership roles as well worldwide. And I know, Bernadette, you've actually been centrally involved in an impressive body of publications. You might just give a mention to a few of them. I mean, both of your CVs are incredible, but just give a mention to all the work and publications you've been involved in.
Just maybe one focus, which is trying to bring together our practice. You know, staff are developing new ways of doing spirituality in all kinds of domains. So first of all, we did the Rutledge International Handbook on Spirituality in the Professions. 52 professions, like spirituality and childhood studies that Noel Keating has developed so much. So staff are developing specialisations for different professions. So that was our first handbook, just to show the reach of spirituality into very diverse professions. Then secondly, we moved on to what I mentioned this new approach to researching spirituality, which integrates contemplative practice with the study of spirituality at a research level. And now we hope that our next volume will be on the emerging diversity of spiritual practices. So Professor Kerry Clough, who is a visiting scholar in the department in the spirituality studies, cannot be with us today, but she's very involved in leading the publication of these books, so that what we're learning by our doing, we're actually sharing with the world, so that other people can have the experience and the opportunity to bring to their own continents what's happening in Waterford and SCTU.
It's so incredible. As you sit here, you must be both just so immensely proud and looking out at your peers and the community that you've created. I just want to bring you back, Michael, and just as a way of closing up, we spoke at the beginning, it was a humble beginning, there was love in the air, it was on a napkin. Is there any particular moment that stands out for you, a little moment that you might want to share with people on your journey?
Gosh, there are so many moments. Let me just mention one of the things that has impressed me most over the years is the extent to which people will go to do the programme. I mean, we had 2 people who used to travel from Donegal, leaving on a bus at 2 o'clock in the morning when it was being offered as a day-a-week programme. They'd come all the way down at 2 o'clock in the morning on a bus from Donegal to do the programme. Or I can think, for example, of when we went to the 3 days a week kind of model. We had people coming in from South Africa and from Canada. They'd fly in for those days and go out again and come back because their circumstances were such that it was better for them to do it that way, and they were able to do it that way. So, you know, these were tremendous efforts people would make to do this programme. And then I think, for example, of Paddy, who, when we were in All Hallows, and it was a day a week at the time, and he came to me and he said, Michael, he said, you know, I'm 79 years of age, you know, and I suppose I'm too old now to be doing this programme. And I went through different things with him that you'd need, like the academic credentials, the interest and all this kind of thing. I said, Paddy, you've got all that. And I said, there's no age limit in doing this programme. And he graduated at 80 years of age.
Wow, is that incredible? There's no age. I think that deserves a round of applause. Absolutely. And we're all smiling here as you shared those wonderful stories. Bernadette, is there something that maybe you'd like to share?
I suppose one of the moments that I really celebrate is the way that you can get into this programme without going through a classical degree route as a mature student. You know, so we often underestimate the experience that we've had. You know, people maybe had to leave school early because they were the eldest child and needed to earn income, and then, you know, went into a company, became the secretary in the company, worked their way up through accounts, and then end up in senior management, chief financial officer, gradually, bit by bit. And then the person wants to do spirituality studies and they say, but I've no degree. Well, you know, often it's women. Can I really get into this program, or do I have to start back with a degree? And this whole opportunity in the university to recognise prior professional learning is an absolutely wonderful mechanism, and I know that there are many people in the room here today who came through that route and for whom it has been transformative to be able to gather your experience together, to have it documented. And you know, the people would say at the end, I don't recognise myself, I didn't think that was me, when it was all pieced together. And particularly the international women who live in countries where women don't have access to university often, and to be able to piece together, they could be leading huge hospitals, all kinds of NGO activity, but it's not formally written down through a degree. And to have a mechanism where we're able to piece that together through the university and have it recognised. And I know Noelia is very involved in this and has done the digital badge for it. There's a digital badge you can get to do this now. So this is one of our great joys, to be able to provide that kind of opportunity to people who weren't able to avail of something like that at 18, 19 or 20.
And you know what, as you're just speaking, you're speaking to me, you're speaking to my story. I was a child who couldn't read or write until I was 9 and had great difficulty going through school. And I just think, and I'm sure it's felt in the room here, their heart, their passion, the spirit of this community has been so shown by both of you. Can you please join me in giving them both a huge round of applause? Dr. Bernadette Flanagan and Dr. Michael O'Sullivan, thank you so, so much. I'm probably not doing very well on time, so forgive me. I'm looking to the boss, Tomas and Sean. They'll give me the heads up. As we celebrate 25 years of applied spirituality, it feels so meaningful now to listen to those who have walked the path, each in a very different way. We've probably all walked the path, and I could ask any one of you in this room to come on stage and share your story. But I'm going to chat to a panel of 3 former students who in many ways really reflect the evolving story of the MA that we heard Michael and Bernadette talk about. Their lives, their work, their depth, their resilience, their transformative journey really speaks to the heart of the programme. So first up, I'm going to invite Dr. Noelia Molina, programme leader of the MA currently in Applied Spirituality, to join me on stage. She doesn't need any introduction, but she is going to be talking us about how, yes, you can keep the interviews going. And then I'm going to invite up also Dr. Michael Punch is going to join me on stage, an academic whose work explores urban regeneration following a life-changing road traffic accident that resulted in a traumatic brain injury. Mick undertook a long and courageous journey of recovery, one that led him back to study in All Hallows, and his story really speaks to resilience, meaning-making and transformation. Mick, you're very welcome to join us on stage there. And finally, but absolutely last but certainly not least, I want to welcome PhD candidate Tara Travers, whose research at South East Technical University explores the role of spiritual practices as a pathway towards recovery from eating disorders. And her work is both world-class and groundbreaking. So please give a warm welcome to Tara Travers. How are we all doing? There's water there on the table. We can just move that down there if anybody needs it. There you are. And Now, I think what I might do is go back to the start, like what I did with Michael and Bernadette and Tara. You're down, and I thought I was going to go to Noelia first, but I'm going to go to Tara first. And as I was chatting to Tara, I was really moved, Tara, to hear that if it wasn't for an interview that Michael had done on the radio, that your husband David had heard, and I believe David is here today, that you might not have been here, but both of you answered the call. You might tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the MA.
Yeah, it began, as you said, with my husband Michael investigating the MA and, looking up all the online sources. And he was the one that found a local radio station interview. I don't know if you remember that, Michael. So he found this interview somewhere online, and we both kind of listened to the interview about the MA programme. And then at the end of this, because this was all about because David was going to do it, and then at the end of it I kind of went, but how come you're getting to do that? And he just kind of went, but you can too. And I was like, oh yeah. So then that was the catalyst then for starting then the application process.
And before you started, was your background in spirituality? It was sort of in spirituality, but a little bit different. You might just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was very much kind of a little bit of an East meets West in my situation. I had grown up in a kind of a Catholic family, typical Irish. I had a mother and grandmother that were very, very spiritual and very dedicated. But I myself found my way through yoga as a practice in college. And I went off and did a lot of kind of very transformative work in various ashrams around the world. But as a result of investigating and being kind of deeply immersed in a yogic life from an Eastern perspective, something started to drop for me that but there is some of this in my own tradition. So that having kind of really deeply been immersed in yoga, I actually then started to begin to investigate, but what's happening within Christianity? And at the time when myself and David did the MA, it was an MA in applied Christian spirituality. So there was just a slightly different tone perhaps. But yeah, so it was kind of, for me, finding my way into the MA was a culmination of a very long time of kind of seeking and searching and putting two worlds together.
And we'll talk about how those two worlds collide. But I love that idea of seeking and searching. And Noelia, I'm sure when you were seeking a course to do, and again, Michael is involved in this. I think, Michael, you have a lot to say about all these different stories that you have here. But interestingly, Noelia, did you ever think that you would become the programme leader? What a full circle moment from meeting Michael. You might share that with us.
Yeah, so I came to Milltown in 2005 just to do an evening spirituality course, which once a week. I work in oncology in the cancer hospital in Radgar, so I just remember going there and being so excited. I was really searching for something, and I met Michael in the corridor in Milltown.
Another corridor story.
Another corridor.
I mean, we'll have to investigate that.
We have a connection because I have lived in Ecuador and Argentina. He was a missionary in Chile during the Pinochet era, and obviously he speaks Spanish. So we have that big connection, and we got to talk about Latin America because we're both we're passionate about that part of the world. And from there, I did my evening course, and he actually asked me, "Do you want to go on into the high deep?" And after I finished that, I got pregnant. I couldn't go into the MA because I have to look after for the baby for the first year. And then I went with my baby. I remember going with Oshin, who is now 18. He was 18 months, and I into Milltown, and Michael was there waiting, I remember, and he said, I'm going to introduce you to a friend of mine, Bernadette. So he introduced me to Bernadette, and he really just pushed me, did you consider doing a PhD? Which was amazing, really, because I was completely in a different discipline in the academy, in genetics. And it was really expected for me to go into a science PhD. you know.
And the rest, as they say, is history. You're sitting on stage now as the course leader. Mick, I want to go back to your story, but also Micah was involved, but in a different location.
Yeah.
This goes back to All Hallows. You might just tell us a little bit about your story, because I was very moved when we spoke on the phone.
Yeah, well, my story goes back a long time, really, because I was a lecturer in UCD. And in 2012, the Americans would say 10, 11, 12. October the 11th, 2012, I was knocked off my bicycle and I ended up in hospital for 17 months. And at the end of that, I mean, we're told between acute and then the NRH and then finally the Royal Hospital Donnybrook, which was the best of them. I always say I left the NRH in a wheelchair and I walked out of Donnybrook. And when I came out of Donnybrook, a very good friend of mine, John Joe Spring, who is now a parish priest in Cabra. John Joe was involved in All Hallows, and John Joe arranged for a room that I could rent while I was still on my wheelchair. So they had an accessible room he arranged for me to be able to rent for a period. And during that period, I began to run into the odd time Michael O'Sullivan, and he planted the seeds in my brain of doing an MA. And I was thinking, don't be crazy. I'm in a wheelchair, and that, why should that be a barrier? And he was right. And I had a long history. Like my background was as a lecturer in UCD, initially in sociology, although my training was geography. So urban geography was my particular kind of interest. And Michael planted the seeds of the possibility of doing a spirituality master's. And to begin with, I was thinking I was skeptical. I don't know if I can. And that took root, and it grew from there. And I was in All Hallows for a period, and then the idea of doing the AMA took hold. And I eventually had a word with Michael and said, "Okay, this MA, where do I sign?" And it took off from there. And I was one of the graduates who graduated from Waterford in 2014, I think, 17, yeah.
It's incredible, and I know I'm laughing, Michael, but it's incredible that you have such vision and you believe in so many different people with different stories. You did the same to me. I think I was on holiday and you really encouraged me to fill in that form. And it was, I want to say a collective thank you, I suppose, to both of you, yourself and Bernadette. We wouldn't be on this stage if it wasn't for you. Tara, I know we've spoken about your PhD, but when you applied for that MA, did you ever think that it would change your life so greatly and that now you would be studying a PhD in such an interesting area of research, eating disorders and the spirituality of eating disorders? You might talk to us a little bit about that. When I started the MA, I had no clue what was ahead of me at all. I literally just kind of jumped in with both feet, complete faith, this was going to be fine. But when I actually heard about the dissertation in the MA, I was just filled with, like, as many people are, like, oh, how am I going to manage to get that done? But there was something very transformative in doing the research, actually, even in the MA. I actually entered an advertisement to do the PhD. And there was something in the title that grabbed me. So the title of the research is Hunger for Food, Hunger for Life, the Inner Spiritual World of Women Who Have Overcome Eating Disorders. And when I read the title, something actually jumped inside my heart. I had a somatic experience. And I felt, whoever wrote that knew exactly what they were talking, just absolutely gets the whole crux of it. Because I read the soul's longing for itself in that title. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's it. And then, of course, I asked later on, and Bernadette wrote that title. That was Bernadette's title. So it was Bernadette that grabbed me from behind the screen somewhere when she wrote that. But I think one of the reasons that I did apply for it was because even though I had such resistance to doing the dissertation, I did find it actually very transformative, because I found myself walking in a landscape and journeying with women that I was interviewing in a landscape that was also my own landscape and my own territory and my own journey. So I found the reason I did apply for it was because I found at the end of it, when I started, I didn't want to finish it in the MA.
So that was one of the main drivers for me.
And just as you're talking, I noticed, Noelle, you're nodding along, and you are a supervisor to Tara, but as well as the dissertations, Noelle, which are incredibly rich, and the areas of research is just so diverse. I want to talk about the spiritual autobiography. Has anybody in the room written a spiritual autobiography? I think we can all nod along to that. But while I laugh there, it's such an important and formative part of the process, and it's something you're so passionate about, and it really is getting recognition on a world stage. But just talk to us about that beginning piece of writing your story, that narrative inquiry, and then linking that into the dissertation piece.
Yeah, so that part, that module we do around the Fresh Week, and it really opened what Bernadette was talking about here, a contemplative inquiry in your own life, your own spiritual heritage. Not only just yourself, but your ancestors, your homeland. So it's quite deep at that level, and writing on the first person. I have done studies on spiritual autobiography and presented even in the conference that Michael was talking about there in the International Network for Applied for a Study of Spirituality. And I know other academics have said to me, how can you do a module like that in the academy, in the university? We would love to do something like that. And I have that over and over when I have presented the transformative power of that module. And I know a lot of people here have, they could talk themselves about their own transformation with a spiritual autobiography. And from there, the deep questions of why am I doing this MA? Why now? What kind of threshold I am in my life now? What would I really like to study that is close to my heart? Because when I started my PhD on mindfulness, anxiety. Mindfulness was a big thing at the time. And I remember it was going nowhere, really. Bernadette said to me, spirituality is about the human experience. Like, what is the bigger thing happening to you now? And I nearly have to do that, a spiritual autobiography myself, to say, well, look, the biggest thing happening to me now is I became a mother. And the transition to motherhood is the biggest thing that happened to me. And that was it. That is your PhD, the transition to motherhood as a spiritual experience. So it is extremely important to go that deep in yourself.
Whatever the call is, or whatever is in there. And I know, Mick, you had a great way of talking about the community that you encountered, and you called it a fellow explorers of mystery. Was that exactly?
Explorers into mystery.
Into mystery. I knew I was getting it slightly wrong. Explorers into mystery. And that speaks to the mystery that Noelle was talking about, and those deep kind of questions and those liminal spaces that often we don't get a chance to investigate.
Well, it's a wonderful, productive category, because you talk about the mystery of the fact that we're here. The mystery of each day is a wonderful thing. And I mean, even the phrase "I am" is the most wonderful phrase you can say. I mean, it means God, and then it's just a state of being. I am here. I wrote a small piece called "I Am Still Here" after having an accident. And it was a way of saying, I've come through all of this, and I'm still here.
And when you spoke to me about how you navigate the world now, or even just geography, that was your kind of background, urban landscapes. Yeah. And I noticed, and you might share with everybody here, my lens has changed just from talking to you. But how did it change for you as somebody that had studied urban landscapes, but now bringing the spiritual into it?
Yeah, no. There are layers and layers and layers that can be unpacked when you begin to ask a specifically spiritual question, which is not asked or actually discouraged in the more formal academic world of urban geography or urban sociology or any of those disciplines. There's even a resistance to that kind of thinking.
A resistance to entering into the spiritual.
Entering a spiritual question. To raise a spiritual question is not. It's not that it's not done. It's discouraged.
And I think that goes full circle to why we're all here, why we're championing this work, because it's so important on a world stage. And I wanted to know, would you share the little story that you did? Because we're talking about entering into mystery.
Yeah.
And the wisdom of your mum, because you spoke about, or your mum, I think you might have said mum, I'm saying mum, but you spoke about you were in a wheelchair.
Yeah, because I'm from South East Clare, I'd say ma.
The mum. Well, the mum or your ma had great wisdom. And something that's on stage with you now, I'm just very aware of it because I'm looking at it. And for me, that speaks to that whole concept of the interconnectivity. There's no separation. God is in all things. But even as something moves into a different form, and for you, your body went into for a different form, your life changed. But what you're holding there shows me it's very significant.
And to remember the date, the Americans would say 10, 11, 12. So October the 11th, 2012, I was cycling to work. I was a university lecturer, and I was cycling to work in UCD, where I was teaching in urban sociology. And I was knocked off my bicycle, turning off of Leeson Street onto the Appian Way. And just making that turn, somebody did something wrong and hit me and sent me flying. And I woke up in January 2013, and I gradually became conscious of where I was and who I was. And it began to tell me slowly that I was in this very, very bad accident, and I almost died. And I discovered several things in that period. First of all, that I mattered, that the world was full of love, and that it mattered that I continued on, and that there was an emotional shock, which was I should have known, but I didn't. I felt I didn't. That it mattered that I still was, and when I got discharged from hospital in 2014, a wonderful man, he's a priest up in Cabra now, John Joe Spring, organised for me to be able to rent a room in All Hallows. And during that period, I began to actually met Michael O'Sullivan a couple of times, and he began to plant the seeds of the possibility of doing the spirituality MA. So that's how it formed.
And tell us about this, because you told me a story about something, and this speaks to, I suppose, the hope, and it speaks to vision and never believing. Like, I think it speaks to miracles. Yeah. But tell us what your mum said to you about being in a wheelchair and who that belongs to.
Well, I was in the NRH it's on Rochestown Avenue. People said Dunleary, but it's really Rochestown Avenue, but it's near Dunleary. And I always say, like, the accident occurred, and then I was in acute care for a period in Vincent's on the south side, and then they moved me into the NRH on Rochestown Avenue. And then I was moved from there to the Royal Hospital in Donnybrook. And I always say, like, I left the NRH in a wheelchair and I walked out of Donnybrook. But my mother comes into this in that period, because I was in a wheelchair and I went down to Clare, where I'm originally from, and I was sitting in the wheelchair, and my ma one day said, you should use that. This was my Uncle Frank's. And I said, I don't think I can. And at the time I couldn't. I was wheelchair dependent. But she was wiser than me, smarter than me, obviously. And how right she was. And in 2014, February 15th, 2014, she died. And I obviously got to the funeral and all that. And I was able to get out of the wheelchair. I walked up and did the reading. And most people didn't know I could walk. So I was able to get up and on my feet and read whatever the reading had been selected for the funeral. One of the obvious ones. It was from St. Paul, I think. And it was an important moment in my life because, well, for the obvious reason that my mom we were burying my mom, but I was able to get up and stand up and do the reading, whatever reading we selected. And most people there didn't know I could do that. And because I was so involved in the local parish, which is Gardner Street, it's no longer a parish. Listen, that's not our fault. Donald Neary came down, and John Joe Spring came down to Cratloe, which is my local parish in Clare, and Tony O'Riordan was at the time working in a parish in Limerick, so he came out as well. So you had Donald Neary, John Joe Spring, and Tony O'Riordan. What a funeral! I mean, you'd never seen anything like it in Cratloe.
Well, could you imagine your mum was with us here and your uncle, and you walked on stage here to share your story. And it's that hope and that vision and that trust in God that really, I think, just captures the heart of this programme. I know I'm probably going over time, but I'm going to squeeze in one more question. Is that okay? The question I want to ask you, Tara, is there any moment or memory, like I asked Bernadette and Michael, that kind of sticks out for you, or a place that you bring into your heart that gives you that lovely feeling of the journey?
Well, I talk about my experience of All Hallows, maybe, because that's where I was there, 2013, 2014. I think the place, the setting was really important, as it is also in Milltown now. There was beautiful energy. I remember driving into the grounds the first time and literally just going, wow, this place is amazing. And I was there when it was a 1 day a week. And I remember one of the days we were there, they were filming a movie or something like that, and they're all there in the long dresses and the costumes and the whole lot, because it was that type of place. And there was a beautiful kind of history, like there was a long Vincentian tradition. There was a long history of training priests to go out and do missionary work since 18 something or other. I can't remember the exact date. There was a church on the premises. You could do Lectio Divina at lunchtime. There was a lot going on. So I suppose my standout memory from All Hallows is really just kind of being situated spiritually in a place that was like steeped in that kind of history, and you couldn't help but just absorb it, actually, even just from being there. Beautiful grounds, trees, all that kind of thing. Yeah, so I think that standout. And of course the class, and the crack we had as well. It's not all serious.
There's a bit of fun as well. But you mentioned a particular artist and sitting under the window and the light coming in.
Oh, yeah. There's a Harry Clark, I hope they still have it. There's a Harry Clark window in the library in All Hallows. I used to always go and sit. And there was a time of the day when the light came around and I'd be sitting there at my laptop and my notebook, and it would just shine through and there'd be all these colours on my desk. I just thought that was magical, actually.
And even as you're speaking, I'm getting the goosebumps that I did when you said it, and that really captures it for me. The MA is about filling your heart with that light and allowing the light to come in, so it speaks to the very deepest depth of what's in your heart and what God wants you to do on this world. What is my work? What is my calling? And you're nodding again, Noelia. Have you got a memory, and you're now the director. I'm sure you've seen it all from beginnings to the right full circle moment. Is there anything that stands out for you and you kind of go, I'm so grateful for this?
Yeah, it's the transformation, really. I've seen the transformation. I've been in the three, in Milltown, in All Hallows, doing the PhD, and now in SCTU. But just seeing the transformation of people year after year, and in myself. Because when I came, I grew up as a Catholic in Spain, so I would have said I have a very rigid views of maybe, scriptures and the way you have to behave. And I remember going, even in Milltown, those epiphanies, really thinking about, I remember Una used to do reflective practices for me, and that just opened my mind. Kieran Mahoney, I mean, it's just blown my mind about the scriptures became alive for me. And those are the epiphany moments that really changed me spiritually, really, at the beginning in the program, which is a lot of being, I was late 20s, I was lost, didn't know what to do with life. And then one moment that I have is going through the PhD panel in All Hallows. And I have a 6 weeks baby. So I said to Bernadette, I have to bring Anna, like she's very small. And okay, fine, you're there with the baby in the academic panel to get the PhD.
The youngest student. We have our youngest student so far.
Yeah.
There's no age limit at all. From 80 to, how old was she? 6 months?
Yes, very little. But the thing is, when I went to All Hallows to do my, when you finish your PhD, you have to give your hard copies, into the college. I told Anna to come with me. She was 6 years of age. And she said, oh, what is this? Did you write this? And I just thought it was a full circle of how I started, yeah.
That is so, so lovely. Mick, this question's coming to you as well. Is there any moment that you'd like to share that really kind of stands out for you?
Well, the single statement I would give to you is gratitude is the beating heart of spirituality. That is what I've learned.
Gratitude is the beating heart of spirituality. I think that deserves a round of applause. How beautiful is that? Now we're going to turn to the audience, and because this is all of our celebration, we're all here to celebrate together. Is anybody brave enough to stand up, maybe say their name and their class and share a little memory of their standout moment from doing the programme? If you stand up, in fact, I might give Michael the mic here. There you go, our roving reporter. If anybody wants to stand up, there's somebody down there to share a little reflection.
12:05.
Thank you so much. My name is Sister Agnes Agbom. I studied Masters on Applied Spirituality 2014. I was studying in All Hallows. I did my philosophy and theology 4 years degree. Then I met Michael. I was interested in the topic because I came from a contemplative background. I came from a Cistercian monastery from Nigeria. So I want to deepen my experience. Before I came, I was teaching in the novitiate. But I always tell my spirit, I want to learn. I want to deepen my experience. So I came and I found that topic, the class, very, very interesting. So there's a quotation that stayed with me from that class. It says, we are human beings. We are spiritual beings on a human journey. So I never forget that. I'm walking on the ground as a human being, but each day that comes to my mind. Agnes, who are you? What are you? And what are you doing here? So I got it deepened. And then there's another two things. One is contemplative prayer. That time, each time we started class, we have at least time for reflection and prayer before ever we start any other thing. That stayed with me because I developed it into an hour every day. Each day I gave the Lord an hour, and He helped me because where I come from now is a terrible place to live in because of our problem with the Muslims. The killings, like last Monday, my nephew was attacked, and after the shooting, he called me on the phone and showed me himself, and I nearly fainted. So, but I went in, I sat down, I said, Lord, where are you in this situation? So after that an hour, I picked myself up again, and I started talking to him, and I said, listen, are you alive? He said, yes, 10 of us died, but I'm breathing. So I was talking to him until he was taken to hospital. So he's on the mend now, please God. So it has helped me. Then another one is spiritual direction. People started calling on me from Nigeria, from different places, because things very bad are happening around them. Agnes, how do you cope with all this news? How can I cope with what is happening to me? Last Sunday, I couldn't go to church because I'm afraid, the church could be bombed. So every experience I got from this class keeps me going until today. So I'm very grateful to Michael and Benedict and all my classmates here. So God bless you, my
And God bless you, Agnes. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Would anybody else like to share maybe? Oh, we have somebody else.
Hello. Yes, I just want to say that Bernadette and Michael and Noelia, I just want to say to you, you have brought something that began as a seedling and you've brought it to a huge level of development. And I think it's wonderful to think we're celebrating 25 years of this programme. When I came to the program, I came to Milltown in 1985, a year before you, Michael, and we had the program Spiritual Studies, and out of that evolved this hunger for developing a master's in applied spirituality. Jack, Bernadette and I sat down to write it, and I want to tell you that Bernadette at the time deplored my poor skills in computer writing and so on. And there was one particular time when she says, "Oh my goodness," Anyway, what I brought to the program though was my background in existential spirituality, really, from Duquesne University, and it was to introduce a holistic approach, and that wasn't very popular in the Milltown that I came to in 1985. Holistic was considered to be a soft type of approach to life, but anyway. The harnessing of human experience and using the phenomenological methodology to look at the structure of human experience, that really was in the background of our minds. We couldn't always get it out on paper, but we used that idea. The second thing was, Noelia mentioned it, transformation was really our agenda. I remember one student who challenged me on the first day. She said, when we were telling about the program, she said, "What's your agenda, Una? What's your agenda?" And it was the first time I was asked that, really. I said, and I had to admit, I said, it's transformation rather than information. So that was important. Theology was very afraid of the messiness of human experience, and to be able to use human experience. And Adrian Van Kamenow had taught us that, like writing about our own experience. Now it's called your memory and biography and all of that. But anyway, that was it. So thank you so much.
And thanks, Una, you mentioned schedule. I'm a person that likes to stick to a schedule, and on that note, we have to keep going on with the schedule. We're going to do a little transformation now, but before we do, can you please give our panel a huge round of applause for sharing so deeply, and Una as well. Thank you so much. And as we just do a quick transformation, is everybody doing okay? Yes, thank you so much. I'm going to invite Dr. Michael O'Sullivan back up again for our next piece here on stage.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are very fortunate to have with us here today Dr. Suzanne Denis from Southeast Technological University, head of the School of Humanities there, where we are, our studies are situated, institutionally situated. And she's travelled up from Waterford to be with us today. And really we have found Suzanne to be a wonderful support to us over these 10 years now that we've been working together, really. You could say it's 10 years. I know that Richard was the head at the time, but at the beginning. But it's just wonderful that you're here, and we really, really look forward to hearing you now speak to us in your capacity.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today at this wonderful celebration. I just want to say that I'm really speaking on behalf of the President, and who unfortunately couldn't join us today. But SETU is rightly proud to be the only university in Ireland offering MA and PhD degrees in applied spirituality, as well as having a research group in spirituality studies that is uniquely niche and exceptionally well networked internationally. So, as you've already heard, but I'm going to tell you again how spirituality studies came to SETU. It came as a result of discussions and negotiations which took place in 2015-2016 between, on the one hand, Doctors Michael O'Sullivan and Brenda Flanagan, who had just experienced the sudden closure of All Hallows College, where MA in spirituality studies had flourished, and where they'd exercised leadership roles in developing these studies. And on the other hand, Doctors Richard Hayes and Dr. Michael Howlett, who's here today with us, and both Richard and Michael were in WIT, and they were the respective heads of the time of the School of Humanities and the Department of Applied Arts. A previous interinstitutional research collaboration between Bernadette and Michael Howlett had led to the creation of the Spiritual Capital Ireland Centre, and this collaboration led to the foundation of the MA negotiations. So Dr. Richard Hayes, who is now our Vice President of Strategy in the university, is unable to be here today, but he has sent the following words of support. The development of spirituality studies at SETU is such a wonderful success story and continues to strengthen and grow, which is great to see. And I think we all echo those words. But the team of four navigated the accreditation process for the MA. And since its opening at WIT, now SETU, we have recruited amazing graduates each year. And we're delighted that so many of you are here today, along with staff from Milltown Institute and All Hallows College, and we're all celebrating together the development of postgraduate studies in applied spirituality, which has built on the 3 different higher educational institutes over the span of 25 years. So naturally, having a programme in applied spirituality at the Masters has led to requests for PhD opportunities, and the university environment has provided excellent collaboration opportunities, such as a tourism section in the university, which has allowed for the study of pilgrimage studies, and a department of nursing for spiritual care topics. And SETU is also a European university under the title EU Connexus. And this network of 9 European universities has facilitated the development of a maritime pilgrimage specialisation in spirituality studies. And for this, we are collaborating with Zadar University in Croatia and the Catholic University in Valencia in Spain. In 2021, the university was delighted to affirm the volume of research and publications, conferences, and public engagement by the spirituality studies staff. And we authorised the creation of a spirituality studies research group within the university. It's called SpireSop, Spirituality in Society and the Professions. And the diverse range of impacts of work from this group is publicly acknowledged on the SETU website, and the 5 current PhD candidates who are with us today, and they're all studying for their PhD, and they've all progressed from the MA programme, and one of these 5 candidates has successfully defended her research on December 15th and will be conferred towards the end of the year. So in our SETU environment, we've held, as has previously been mentioned, several international conferences and book launches. And for example, the largest conference, which has been alluded to a number of times, it took place in 2023. It was titled Spirituality, Critical Reflection and Professional Practice in an Uncertain World. And as already mentioned, delegates came from 25 countries and 5 continents. But this was thanks to the collaboration between Michael O'Sullivan, the founding program leader, and he's also, which I don't think has been mentioned previously, he's an emeritus scholar of our university. And to Michael's connections on the International Network for Spirituality Studies, this wonderful conference came to SETU. I want to take the opportunity to pay particular thanks and gratitude to the exceptional staff who lead, support, direct and participate in the many outreaches of spirituality studies. So along with Bernadette and Michael, it's very appropriate to mention Noelia Molina, our current MA programme leader and doctoral supervisor, who does a fantastic job. She, along with Paul Clogher and Pádraig Hurley, who are research group co-leaders with Bernadette, module leaders and research supervisors Elizabeth McRory, David Halpin, Rory Halpin, Niamh Brennan, Bernadette Masterson, Philip Kremen, Hazel O'Brien and Brian Dooney. We're absolutely. SETU is extremely lucky to have staff of their calibre, and ye, as current students, former graduates, have been blessed really to have such wonderful staff. So, some of the publications in spirituality have set SETU apart as a global leader in spirituality studies, such as the Rutledge Handbook of Spirituality and Society in the Professions, Spirituality and Addiction, and the Rutledge Handbook for Research Methods in Spirituality and Contemplative Studies. And Bernadette has collaborated with several colleagues in the production of these handbooks. And I do want to thank our Honorary Research Fellow in Spirituality Studies at SETU, Professor Kerry Clough, who unfortunately isn't with us today. And Kerry is also a graduate of the MA in Applied Spirituality. And I really do want to thank and acknowledge that all of this work owes a great deal to Spire. And Michael has already given us the background to Spire, which is an autonomous registered charity based at the Jesuit Centre in Dublin, founded by Bernadette and Michael. And it has been led through collaborative trusteeship with Dr. Ruth Harris, who's there with us. Ruth, also a graduate of the MA, and also has been an external examiner for the MA programme in SETU. Andrea, who's doing a fantastic job as MC, and she is also on the trusteeship of the Aspire. And Dr. Anne-Marie Dixon, who is a lecturer on the MA in the 3 institutions involved with the programme. Graduate volunteers have provided exceptional support to the flourishing of Spire. Not least, and I do want to mention Kathleen Ling, because I see Kathleen's name mentioned. I see her getting glowing recommendations and tributes in the acknowledgements of the MA dissertations. So Spire hosts and resources the SETU MA and PhD studies, and it is just a fantastic learning environment. And Danielle went up recently, Danielle is our head of department, and she came back saying she would like to go and live there, but I said no, she can't. It is a wonderful, wonderful facility, and we are so lucky that SETU has access to it, because it provides a globally unique library, sponsorships and promotion work through the extensive reach of the network and the website and the social media. So sponsors of Spire, some of whom are here today, are key to stocking the exceptional library and maintaining its infrastructure, and to providing a number of MA scholarships and co-funded PhD opportunities. And I do want to say that SETU is extremely grateful for all of this support. The final item I just want to allude to is the fact that the international spirituality expertise that comes to Ireland to Spire has also been supported by the Fulbright scheme, and we're very grateful to have had that opportunity to engage with Fulbright scholars. So SETU and Spire have had an exceptional collaboration in the development of spirituality studies over our 10 years together. And on behalf of SETU, can I say we very much look forward to many more chapters in this great story. So thank you all very much.
So thank you very much, Suzanne. As I've said already, we have found you to be a wonderful colleague to work with, and we've been very fortunate to have such a person as yourself in the role that you're in, given the need to be able to work well with people, and you certainly made that possible. So the next piece of our day now is we'll be moving to the memory capsule. And Dr. Ruth Harris, who is a graduate of the programme and later became an external examiner for the programme, she's also a trustee of Spire. She's now going to lead us on this piece.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute privilege to be here among so many past graduates, past lecturers, past staff, past directors, etc. So I suppose when the organising committee was looking at how we'd organise the day, we were very much aware that it wouldn't be possible to have the voice of the graduate really expressed in any coherent way, given the time and the limitations that we had. So we were trying to come up with some ideas, and Bernadette and Michael and indeed Andrea came up with the idea of a time capsule. So you can see it here with its honourable position there. This is largely symbolic, I think. I think we all would have had experience when we were studying spirituality of maybe doing symbolic pieces where at the end of the programme we each brought something that was representative of who we were. I remember one time running one of those, and everybody brought a rock. We put all the little rocks in a pile, and that pile was our class, and that was the symbol of our class. So in this case, what we have is we have this time capsule. You have a sheet in your pack which gives you the explanation, and I think Michael has sent out a lot of the information as well. And you also have a little card, so you should have a little card as well that you can work with. So basically we'd like you to contribute to our time capsule. It'll be stored in the Spire Library at Milltown Park. And we'd like you to use both sides of the card provided to note down. So on one side you can put a quote or an insight from a favourite writer encountered during your spirituality studies. Now, some of you may have been very diligent and copied down something and brought it with you, and you can just transcribe it. But if you haven't, it doesn't matter. Just write something that you think of yourselves, all right? And then on the other side, perhaps you'd like to share a memory that stays with you from your postgraduate studies in applied spirituality. I think the students we had here this morning were really great at sharing their experiences, and it might have triggered other experiences for yourselves. You may include your name or you may remain anonymous. That's up to yourselves. So the aim is to capture the thoughts and memories of those gathered here today for the future. And the capsule will be opened after 10 years. And the youngest member of the current class, we chose the youngest member, Aoife Weston. How are we, Aoife, here? So Aoife is going to be our person who agrees to be present at the opening of it in 2036. We'll see what else might happen on that day. We won't make any promises. Now, we were conscious of the fact, I know I certainly felt when we talked about a time capsule, what a pity to lock away all of those beautiful memories and maybe all those inspirational pieces that people may have found from their studies. So what we'd like to do in this second part, now this is open to everybody here in the room, not just graduates, right? We'd like you to submit a short reflection. Now we did say 300 words maximum because we'd like to fit it on one page, on how engagement with spirituality studies, or indeed engagement with life, with spirituality, depending on where you're coming from, as a student, educator or guest, has been transformative for you in your life. So Michael talked about the fact that at the end of the year of spirituality studies, people provided feedback. But this is a much more long-term piece, really, which is looking at what has been transformative for people. And transformative learning is a real interest for me, and it's something that I feel is really important in people's lives. And I noticed that quite a lot of people mentioned transformation and transformative aspects of the spirituality program during the interviews. So we'd like you to include your name and a sentence on who you are or what you do. Okay, something very, very simple, just to capture who you are. And in particular, we'd like you to answer the question, what writer or text has shaped your own spirituality? So you're free to choose anything you wish. So you may wish to include the quote you used for the time capsule, but you don't have to. You can go away and find something else that's maybe more meaningful or more meaningful for you on a long-term basis. On reflection, how has this inspired you in terms of your own spirituality, your relationships with others, with the world around you, or in your work? So we were looking at what are the dimensions, and we're very aware with applied spirituality that it is applied into real life, it's applied into the lived experience, and that's what we're really trying to capture from you. You may wish to include a memorable moment from your studies of spirituality. Sometimes these kind of link in, a day that you were listening to Jack Finnegan talking about such a thing, and you were sitting in class and suddenly you realised something. So sometimes there may be a link, there may not. We were looking at how do you respond, so feel free to respond in prose. If you want to respond in poetry, that would be beautiful. But please no plagiarism or AI. Sorry, that's the lecturer in me coming out now. We want your authentic voice. All right, that's what we really want to hear, is what was meaningful for you. And we hope to produce a short publication drawing on your reflections to capture the impact of the study of spirituality on people's lives, while also highlighting the great wealth of writings in spirituality, past and present. So we'd hope that perhaps in a year's time we'd have something ready that can be published in a fairly, well, we'll see. Maybe it will be very professional, maybe it won't, but it will be some sort of publication anyway. Now, we will take it that providing your name and a sentence on what you do are consenting to the inclusion of the short publication, which we hope to produce. Okay, so there won't be any consent forms going out, but we would like you to understand that you are consenting that this piece that you're writing can be included in something that will be published. So I've provided my own email address there. It's not the handiest one. I didn't use my professional one. There are too many things blocking unknown writers, I'm afraid. So it's toruthharris@gmail.com. You might just know that's a 2, that's a number 2, and Ruth Harris has only one H in the middle. When I invented this email address, I was just trying to find something nobody else had, and I wasn't thinking of the complications of trying to call it out to other people. But it's there, and it's also on the emails that Michael sent out, okay? So, as I said, it really is about trying to capture the voice and some of the spirit of what we feel here today, and I look forward to getting your contributions. We've given you a month really to do it, so if we could have them all by the end of April, that would be great. And as I say, in a year's time then, we may have something to share. All right, so thanks very much.
Just to thank you to Dr. Ruth Harris there, and I can see everybody is percolating with ideas, and you'd be pleased to know it's time for our comfort break now, a short stretch or comfort break. So if you feel like you want to move your body or go to the toilet or get some water or write very reflectively and contemplatively, now is the time to do it. But I would invite you to come back on time for our keynote speaker at 10 to 1. So we've about 15 minutes. So I would invite everybody now to hold what we're thinking about talking about, because we have our beautiful lunch a little bit later on. So keep the conversation and we'll be ready to continue on in that conversation, because lunch is on the way and I'm sure everybody wants to sit down and continue that conversation. So I'm going to invite Dr. Bernadette Flanagan back onto our stage, and anybody that's coming in, I would invite everybody just to settle a little bit, take your seat. Thank you. Yeah, you look after it.
Welcome back, everyone. Maybe we'll do that little exercise that Andrea gave us at the beginning. Okay, so we'll take a moment to breathe. Just breathe ourselves back into this space. It was really interesting when we thought about organising this event and, talking to various graduates across the years, and many people said, and who will be the speaker? And we wanted to balance the wonderful stories of graduate students with an international speaker. So hopefully the two stories will chime with each other. So we're delighted to have now, as our international speaker, John Philip Newell. John Philip Newell. John has a wonderful website, Earth and Soul, so he doesn't need a very long introduction from me. But if you look at that website, it will note that he is an internationally renowned Celtic teacher and author of spirituality who calls the modern world to reawaken to the sacredness of Earth and every human being. And we know ourselves that there's a greater attentiveness and awareness to Indigenous wisdoms today. It's very important for us in the programme because of the diversity of cultures that students come from. So we're delighted to have somebody to reflect with us on Celtic Indigenous wisdom at this time of ecological crisis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernadette, and thank you for the welcome. It's very good to be among you. May I begin with a prayer for presence. In the gift of this new day, in the gift of the present moment, in the gift of time and eternity intertwined, let us be grateful. Let us be attentive. Let us be open to what has never happened before. In the gift of this new day, in the gift of the present moment, in the gift of time and eternity intertwined. Amen. It's very good to be back in Ireland and to be with you. Normally I like to teach from a standing position, but recently in India I had a scooter accident that makes it quite difficult for me to stand without seizing up. So I'm sorry, but I must be seated. Being seated reminds me of part of my theological education in Edinburgh. I think one of the first great mistakes that the Church of Scotland made was that they tried to teach us scripture immediately after lunch. And we had a beautiful old professor who had the challenge of teaching us after lunch, and he would teach from a seated position, and even he would fall to sleep during his lecture. So I'll try to remain alert for you. So I'm here very much as a wandering Celtic scholar. In the Middle Ages, we were called Scottish Vagans, wandering Scots. But I claim to be part of a very ancient lineage. And the Scottish Vagans was accountable not primarily to the creeds of the church or to the laws of any nation, but accountable primarily to the true depths of the human soul, to the wisdom of Jesus, and to the sacredness of earth. And I'll be returning to those three strengths, those three pillars of the soul a bit later on. The true depths of the human soul, the inner text, the text of Jesus' wisdom, especially the wisdom of love, and seeing earth as sacred text. The first teacher of significance in terms of historical record in the Celtic Christian world was Irenaeus of Lyon, Irenaeus. He emerges in 2nd century Gaul. And one of the things that Irenaeus taught as early as the 2nd century is that creation, the universe, the cosmos, and the human mystery have not been created out of nothing, as imperial Christianity later stated in the 4th century, the doctrine of creation ex nihilo, in which it was suggested that God fashioned everything out of nothing. Irenaeus says, like all the great Celtic teachers after him, creation was not fashioned out of nothing. And get ready for this, because his word is still shocking to the dualistic Western ear. He says, we and all things have been created out of the substance of God. In other words, this stuff, the stuff of the human body, is sacred. And how we handle one another in relationship is a sacred matter. How we care for the most physical needs of those who are hungry and homeless, and those who are seeking refuge and sanctuary in our nations. These are sacred matters. And how we handle the matter of earth with reverence, with a vision for justice and equity, these are sacred matters. This is the field of applied spirituality. One of the most cherished images in the Celtic world that I find myself drawing from almost every time I give a talk is the image, the memory of John the Beloved leaning against Jesus at the Last Supper. In Celtic legend, it was said of John that he therefore heard the heartbeat of God, and he became a symbol of the practice of listening deep within ourselves, listening deep within one another, listening within the body of earth for the beat of the sacred presence. I believe this posture holds the key to the way of true transformation. It's a posture that enables us to remember our essence and to remember the essence of every human being, every life form, the body of earth. Now, I refer to the beloved disciple as John because that is what Celtic legend points to. But I think it's also very important to say that some New Testament scholars today are very importantly arguing that the beloved disciple is not John, but is Mary Magdalene. And I'm entirely in favor of that as well. And in a sense, we need both of these figures. We need an expression of the divine masculine, an expression of the divine feminine. And in India, where I had my scooter accident, I was actually in Oroville, that city of dawn that points to the dawn of a new unity among humanity. But it's very interesting in Oroville, there are photographs of the two great teachers, not just the man, Sri Aurobindo, but the woman, Mira Alfazar, known as the Mother. And I think it's this combination that we so desperately need to recover, not just among us, but within us. To know that within each of us is an expression of the divine feminine, and within each of us is an expression of the divine masculine. To allow these two to dance, to make love within us and in our communities and in our nations. One of the other things that I'd like to say by way of introduction in the context of a spirituality institute is that I believe true spiritual wisdom is always attentive not only to the beauty and glory of life, but is also attentive to the suffering and the struggles of life. Hildegard of Bingen in the 12th century said that there are two wings of awareness that we need to bring to spirituality. He said one is the wing of awareness of life's sacred beauty. The other is the wing of awareness of life's suffering and struggle. And she says if we try to fly with only one wing of awareness, we will be like an eagle trying to fly with only one wing. We won't ascend a true height of perspective. So I invite us today, as we reflect on aspects of the spirituality of today, what are we being called to be? What are we being called to envisage and to do? To fly with these two wings of awareness, to be attentive to the almost unspeakable gift of every day, of every moment, and at the same time bring into our awareness here the people who are deeply suffering in the world, the creatures who are deeply suffering. So the Celtic theme of sacred earth, sacred soul is what I explore in my book on the lineage of Celtic wisdom. But what I'd like to be focusing on today is my most recent title called The Great Search. And the subtitle is Turning to Earth and Soul in the Quest for Healing and Home. So this new book draws on the wisdom not just of Celtic teachers, but on prophetic voices from many parts of the world and from many spiritual traditions. And the book sets out to address the heart of this moment in time by accessing ancient wisdom. I love what the Hebrew mystics say when they speak of new ancient wisdom or new ancient words. How do we draw on these great resources of wisdom that come down from prophetic voices in our spiritual inheritance and speak this wisdom anew, addressing the very heart of the challenges of this moment in time? Because we are in the midst of enormous crisis, precisely because we have not turned to the sacred essence of earth and the sacred essence of every human being. We are witnessing and experiencing turmoil among humanity, wars, conflicts, injustice. We are witnessing tragic imbalances in nature, fires, floods, famines. And it is very clear that if we continue on the path that we have been on, both religiously and politically, the very future of humanity is in doubt. Our systems, both religious and political, have proved bankrupt. They have not prevented this critical moment. This is to be willing to use apocalyptic language. And I believe there is a place for apocalyptic language. To say if we continue on the paths that we have been on, the very future of humanity is in doubt. So let's be willing to use apocalyptic language. But I believe we also need the language of hope. One of the figures that I draw from in The Great Search is Julian of Norwich, 14th century mystic. She's remembered for her words of promise. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. Sometimes when Julian is quoted in relation to these words of promise, she can be made to sound like a naive optimist. But what is it that she is saying? And I believe at the heart of her promise are the words, all shall be well. And we will not be well until all are well. No longer can we pretend that our nation can be well by ignoring the well-being of other nations. No longer can humanity pretend that the human species can be well by ignoring or wronging or exploiting the other species of Earth. No longer can I pretend, as the father of a family, that my family can be well if I am ignoring the health and education and well-being of the family down the street. Julian's words of promise point to the inseparable connection between the whole and the part. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. All the prophetic voices that I draw from in this book, The Great Search, are pointing to earth and to the human soul as the place of our healing and home. None of them are pointing primarily to religion or to nationhood or race as the place of our essential well-being. And all of the prophetic voices in this book are speaking from the edge. They are often being criticized by the holders of religious power and political power and prestige. We are in a time of immense transition at this moment in time. And I believe it is because something new is trying to be born from deep within the human soul. In all the great disciplines of thought, they are all saying, in their wonderfully varied ways, we need to learn again from earth. And we need to come back into true relationship with earth. During times of transition, such as we are in now, the fundamentalist within us rears its head. The fundamentalist within our religious inheritance, the fundamentalist within our political systems and nations. And both religious and political fundamentalism are essentially saying things like, we need to make America great again. We need to make our religion great again. Pretending that the way forward is somehow to go back. But what is it that they are calling us to go back to? Is it to a religion that tried to conquer the world and conquer other spiritual traditions with force and with might? Are we really being called back to forms of nationhood that are prepared to wrong other nations or to exploit earth for the sake of our well-being? Something new is trying to be born. The fundamentalist in our world, in our religions, in our nations, may be getting the headlines at this moment in time, but I don't believe that they represent the deep spirit of this moment in time. I believe the fundamentalisms of our world, whether political or religious, are frightened of the deep birthing that's trying to happen from within the human soul. This deep birthing that is calling us back into true relationship with Earth and back into true relationship with the sacred essence of every human being. Transition is a word, of course, that is used in relation to labor. When the mother's cervix has opened and she is ready to push. We are being invited in our spirituality, convictions and visions to be part of pushing, to be part of enabling a birthing of what is trying to come into being from within us and among us. Some years ago, I wrote a book called The Rebirthing of God. And I launched the publication of the book here in Dublin. And in attendance at the talk that night was a sister who had given much of her vocation to midwifery. And she was particularly alert to all the birthing images in the book. And after I spoke, she stood to make observation. And she said, you know, the God of so much of our religious inheritance is a pretty small God, she said. We've got God well trained, so we think. God is well domesticated to look after us, to look after the people of our religion more than others, to look after our nation more than others, the way we are prepared even to pray for victory in battle, to look after our species more than the other species of Earth. So she said, the God of our religious inheritance is a pretty small God. And she said, the God that is trying to be born, the sense of the sacred that's trying to be born, is a cosmic God, way beyond any of the boundaries that we have tried to create or place around sacredness. So, she said, if we're to be part of this birthing, we are in for a big stretching. I said to her, sister, why could I not have had this conversation with you before writing the conclusion to the book? She got it. We are in for a great stretching. That night I phoned back to Edinburgh to speak with my wife, Ali, and I was telling her about the great stretching. And as I was telling her, this released in Ali a memory of halfway through the labor of our first child's birth. And Ali's memory was halfway through labor, realizing there's no going back. There is no going back to these so-called greatnesses of the past. We're living in a new moment, and something of the divine is trying to be born in us, something that is calling us back into true relationship with Earth and to the essence of every human being. So we are not to go back. And I don't believe we are to look to the centers of power, whether those be religious or political or cultural. I believe we are to look primarily to the edge. Ali and I are now living in the Findhorn community up in the north of Scotland, an eco-spiritual community. And I was there around at the time of the last presidential election in the United States. I was asking a wise old man in the Findhorn community, I said, where's our hope to be found? And he said, let us not place our hope in centers of political power or religious power. Let us place our hope in what is trying to happen at the edge. Some days later, I was giving a talk in a Zoom conference, And I was quoting this wise old man. Let's be strong at the edge. Let's pay attention not only to our teachings and spiritual practice, but how we are being invited to embody and live truth in relation to one another and earth. So I was telling this group on a Zoom call, let's pay attention to the edge and what's trying to be born there. In attendance at the Zoom gathering was an evolutionary biologist, and she said, of course, that's always where new birthing happens, in the evolution of Earth. It's at the edge of a species that there's adaptation to the new. And it's an adaptation in the new that finally affects the whole. So we are people of the edge here. And I implore us to be strong at this moment in time. To be strong within ourselves, among ourselves, that we may be part of enabling new birthing to be happening at a bigger scale. I invite us especially to pay attention to the yearnings that are deep in those at the edge. Many of you will be familiar with the wisdom and the writings of Simone Weil, the young Jewish woman, philosopher, who managed to escape Paris just hours before the Nazi occupation of her capital of her homeland, but then died tragically before the end of the war. One of the things that Simone writes that has meant a great deal to me over the last number of years, she speaks of the efficacy of desire. The efficacy of desire. And by that she means getting in touch with the deepest yearnings of our being. For as Irenaeus says, we are made of God. So our deepest yearnings are not something that we're being invited to turn away from, as the doctrine of original sin has tried to tell us. Our deepest yearnings that we're being invited to get in touch with are the yearnings of the divine. And paying attention to those yearnings, bringing those yearnings up into greater consciousness, and from that place of greater consciousness and awareness, to be able to nurture those yearnings and to be able to embody those yearnings is an important part of the way forward. So the 9 chapters of this book, The Great Search, are given to what I believe are the 9 great yearnings of the human soul at this moment in time. Yearnings for greater vision. Yearnings to be in true relationship with Earth. Yearnings to experience and encounter sacred presence at the heart of every moment and encounter of life. Yearnings to be aware both of the light that is within us as well as the shadows that we carry deep within our inherited makeup. Yearnings for wellness, as I was saying, wellness for the whole, not just for the part. Yearnings above all else for love, this greatest force of the human soul. This force, as Einstein said, that is the greatest force in the universe. Yearnings for wisdom, to learn the wisdoms of many great spiritual traditions. Yearnings for meaning, even in the midst of struggle and suffering. And yearnings for a reimagined faith. Faith not consisting of signing up to the creedal statements of a religion, but faith in the light of the divine that shines from within every human being and that shines deep in every species. For many years in my life, I've been aware of speaking and writing from the edge, because our Celtic inheritance has been pushed again and again to the edge by religious power and sometimes by political power. I've been aware also over the last couple of years of speaking from the edge because a couple of years ago I felt it was important to relinquish my ordination as a minister of the church. because I could no longer see a connection between what I am writing and teaching about the sacredness of earth, the sacredness that is at the heart of every human being, and the whole creedal formulation that began in the 4th century. As my friend Matthew Fox says, last year he wrote an article called "The Hole" in the Nicene Creed. He said the hole in the Nicene Creed is that there's not one reference to the teachings of Jesus, and not one reference to the teachings of love. So my feeling was I could no longer stand in an ordained inheritance that got focused on creedal formulations that began with imperial Christianity in the 4th century. But I was also very clear when I took my decision to relinquish ordination that my act was in no sense an act of judgment of my dearest brothers and sisters, many of whom continue in priesthood and in ministry, trying to work for real change from within the 4 walls of our inheritance. I believe that they are doing really important work. So my act of relinquishing was simply needing to be integrated with what I am teaching. But one of the things that I've become very aware of since I relinquished my ordination is that deep in our Judeo-Christian inheritance is a tension, and I believe it is a creative tension, between the temple on the one hand and the wilderness on the other hand, or between the priestly and the prophetic. And I believe that these two need one another. Within the 4 walls, within the temple, we need desperately to hear prophetic voices from the edge. And those of us who are now trying to speak from the edge, if we cannot speak with love for the family that gathers in the 4 walls of the temple, we should not speak. So these two, the temple and the wilderness, need one another. And it is in this tension of relationship that I believe we can serve new birthings. So I am imploring us to be strong in our different ways at the edge. Strong to take up the radical implications of this spirituality that sees the sacredness of earth and the sacredness of the divine at the heart of every human being. Some years ago, I was giving a talk in San Francisco. In attendance at the talk was a woman who had read many of my books, had heard many of my talks, but halfway through the evening in San Francisco, she suddenly got it. She suddenly saw the implications of a spirituality of the sacredness of earth and the sacredness at the heart of every human being. And she leaned to a friend of hers beside her, and meaning to whisper, it turned out to be a stage whisper. So nearly everyone in the room heard. And what she said to her friend was, "He's a fucking radical." She came up to me at the end of the evening and apologized for her colorful language. And I said, "No need to apologize. You've got it." A spirituality that sees the sacredness of earth and the sacredness of the divine at the heart of every human being is not just a sort of personal spirituality. It's a spiritual vision that can be part of deep and sustainable change for our communities, for our nations, for the world. I invite us to be strong at the edge. And I invite us particularly to pay attention to the inner text, the text of our hearts, not primarily the text of creeds, the text of what the human heart knows. And Jesus, I believe, came not to bring a new religion, but to be part of a great prophetic tradition that called on people to read the inner text, and especially the text of love. Jesus was not a Christian. He did not come to found a new religion. He came to be part of a great prophetic tradition that invites us to know and to read and to follow the deepest knowings of the human soul, and especially the knowings of love. I encourage us to be strong in our souls by reading the text of Jesus' wisdom, not what the church has to say about Jesus, but to listen to the teachings of Jesus, and to know that those sayings and those teachings of Jesus are to be regarded as true and sacred, not because the church tells us that Scripture is sacred, but in hearing the wisdom of Jesus, we recognize in our souls the truth of his teaching, especially the teachings of love. And finally, to be strong by paying attention to the sacred text of earth. And part of returning to a true awareness of the text of earth is a returning to be aware of the divine feminine. Because what we have done to earth in so much of our Western world is again and again what we have done to women. And if we are to move into true reverence of earth, we are being called back into a true reverence for womanhood and the wisdom that womanhood holds for both our religion and for our nations. I'd like to finish by sharing with you a prophecy that comes from Iona. I learned it only a number of years ago. I haven't yet been able to trace its historical period, but it appears to be an ancient prophecy of wisdom. The prophecy states that just as the masculine face of the divine was shown to us clearly in Jesus, so there is coming a day when we will clearly see the feminine face of the divine. And on that day, states the prophecy, the world will know peace. I believe that is the day we are yearning for. And part of coming back into true relationship with earth is to know again, not just within us as women, but in us as men. And not just in individuals, but collectively, to know within us both the shinings of the divine feminine and the shinings of the divine masculine. It is that balance in us that can be part of preparing the day of peace. I'd like to invite us now to do some sharing at our tables and to it may be in groups of 3 at tables if you can't hear one another across the table once everyone starts speaking in the room. So maybe just in groups of 3 to share what's been stirring within you. As you've been hearing the themes of this presentation, but also it may be things that have been stirring in you from things that you've been hearing earlier today in our time together. To recognize what's been stirring and to try to give it utterance, because I think it's often when we utter it that it really moves up into greater consciousness within us. So if you could do that for about 5 minutes in small groups, keep half an eye up here, and when you see me raise my hand, if you would raise your hand and bring to a close what you're sharing, then we'll come back into the full group to enter a final ritual together. Okay? Welcome back. I think you're people after my own heart. I see you raising your hand and you just keep speaking. So part of what we're going to do in this last number of minutes together is to return to something that Mick was saying. The heartbeat of spirituality is gratitude. And I'd like us to begin to start really focusing on gratitude for this time together. I believe it is so close to the heart of life and strength. A number of years ago, I was sharing a meal with a sister, a Mary Knoll sister in New York, who was 103 at that stage. She died just this past year at 105. So alive, so alert in all her senses. And I said to her, Sister Helen, what's your secret? And without missing a heartbeat, she said, gratitude, gratitude. I think it is deeply life-giving. So in a moment I'm going to invite us to identify. We've been sharing what's been calling our attention today together. In a moment I'm going to invite us to especially identify what our gratitude is for being here. Something we've heard, something we've realized, something that's been said. But before we do that, I'd like to teach a simple Alleluia, which comes from the Western Isles of Scotland. It's a Gaelic Alleluia, and it's Shine Alleluia, which is Sing Alleluia. Even if you know it, if you would allow me to sing it through once for you so that you can all hear it, and then we'll learn it one line at a time so that we can then use it together at the end of the ritual. So it goes like this. Shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia. So let me give you one line and then you repeat it. Shine Alleluia, together. Shine Alleluia, and then shine Alleluia, together. Shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia. Okay, all together. Shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia. You're great singers, and I think many of you must already know this piece. So, shall we sing it as a round? Are you feeling that confident? From Bernadette over is one group. From Danielle over is group 2. So I'll start with group 1, and then I'll bring you in after a couple of lines, okay? Shine Alleluia, 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 shine Alleluia. Beautiful. So we now have it. We'll be able to sing it after we get in touch with our specific gratitudes. I'm going to play a piece of music now that's been written by my son Cameron. He's a fiddler, but also a composer. And recently he composed this piece of music for a dance production that was called Mama, that was celebrating the different stages of motherhood. And this piece is called Arrival. So it's the arrival of the new birthing. And you'll hear some of the heartbeat of the new birthing. So this music runs for about 5 minutes. And as we're listening to this music, I would encourage you to start getting in touch with not only your gratitudes, because there may be many from this morning, from the day together, but I invite you to identify one gratitude in particular. And after you've identified that particular gratitude that you want to take with you from the day, I would encourage you to distill it into one word, okay? And that one word may not immediately say to others what your gratitude is, but it's a word that you can take away with you from today and carry it in the days in advance to get in touch with that grateful spirit that you're feeling for what's been happening together. So we'll play Arrival. During Arrival, begin to think of the gratitudes, begin to move it down to one gratitude in particular, and then move it into one word that you'll be able to carry within you. I invite us now to have that one word of gratitude and share it with the other 2 people or 3 people that you've been sharing at your table. So just one word shared to one another, a word that you can carry away with you from today. Okay, let's sing our Alleluia. Shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia. Shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia. Shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia, shine Alleluia. Hallelujah. I'd like us to finish our day together now with a very simple ritual of light, and I hope you can all see the candle burning here. I don't know if the camera can come down so that even those behind the pillar. So I invite us now into a very simple ritual of light, a sort of twofold ritual. One is to hold our hands towards the light, and then up to our eyes, and allow that to express our desire to see light in one another and in all things. Then we place our hands back to the light, this time to our heart, and allow this to express our desire to know the light of the divine that we carry within us for one another and for earth. So a twofold ritual together. Hands back to the light. May I finish with words of blessing from the Western Isles of Scotland, an ancient blessing for peace. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the Son of Peace to you. Amen. Amen.
So we're moving to the final phase of today. And first of all, a profound thanks to John Philip for joining us here today. With the wisdom of the Western Isles, and of course the Pan-Celtic Festival is happening in Ireland this week in Carlow. So perhaps we'll be able to follow up your wisdom by having an opportunity to visit that. I'm not going to attempt to speak the thanks that we feel. You've seen Philip's website. I'm sure you will be hearing words of thanks from us all individually with what we've taken away today and into the future, Philip. So thank you so much. It was a blessing that Philip, a great blessing, because Philip's flight didn't take off some days ago because of the war. So we were really worried about how we were going to manage the speaker, but we were given the gift of Philip in a very practical way as well, by a flight leaving India and getting him home. So thank you so much, Philip, for all of that. Just a brief few words of thanks now at this stage of the day. There will be just a couple of further moments to close the day after this, but before we go into those formal closing moments, I particularly want to thank the sponsors of SPIRE, of the Spirituality Institute. Without the sponsors who had the vision to support this seedling enterprise and enable it to grow across the years, nothing could happen. Particularly, I think the scholarships, the shared grants, the shared funding research, so many things that even the sponsors don't know what they have contributed to. Maybe you've experienced it, and so if you want to say a word of thanks to anybody, table 2 is the table of the sponsors. And so you might be busy with getting thanks from all the people. You know, in the past, I suppose there was a lot of investment by prophetic people in mathematical literacy, in reading literacy, and now those opportunities and services are provided formally by governments. However, the literacy of the spirit is not yet a space that's supported by a formal educational department of spirituality studies. We don't have a yoga day as they have in India or other practices in the state that formalise learning in this space. So we're deeply grateful to the sponsors to allow the learning in this space to emerge. And it's out of the sponsors then that we're able to collaborate with SCTU and co-funding research and scholarships for the MA and PhD programme. So it's a partnership made in heaven at this time, and thank you so much for all that you've done to enable this to happen. These events don't happen without a lot of background work, and you saw the work happening today. So I suppose I'd like to begin at the beginning of the story, which is with Sister Una Agnew, Dr. Una Agnew. So, Una, we invite you to receive a flower of gratefulness. You've spoken much. Your book is The Buttonhole in Heaven of Patrick Kavanagh. Flowers have always been a symbol and a metaphor for you of something intangible and beautiful held together. So we hope you'll enjoy this little flower gift from us that Andrea is going to present to you. And what can we say about our amazing MC, who so beautifully walked us round the day so lightly, we didn't even feel it happening. There were kind of butterflies flying around the room and landing and awakening memories. It was just a wonderful experience, Andre. So thank you so much. All the hidden work, again and again, the script of the day was written. So it's a long and detailed script that carried this day, and we thank you so much for all that you've done. So that you may enjoy your own butterflies after this day, we want to give you some flowers that will attract butterflies to your garden. And finally, what flower can we find for the convener of the day? From the first email to the reminders, you have no idea the complexity of setting up that online booking system. It's the first time that it was used. So the packing of the packs, each individual page, designing the packs, there is so much that went into making this day. And Michael O'Sullivan individually worked on every detail of that. So what are we going to give you, Michael? Well, his office door has a sign that says, "Keep smiling." So if you were to give a smiling flower, what would it be? The sunflower. Perfect. So we have a sunflower for Michael. So thank you everyone for coming. You've travelled great distances, short distances, but you've made your way here. You've set time aside to be here, and we deeply appreciate everything that you have brought to the day. Thank you.
So we have two little things left to do now, and one is the capsule. Dr. Ruth Harris has the time capsule and the captions that went into it, and we now want to, together, the Spire trustees, to seal the capsule to be reopened in 10 years' time, when we're all hopefully as well as we can be. So
why did you ask Diane to read the poem? She gets the rest of it. There's some more still to go.
Oh, I see. Okay. I think more captions are coming in for the capsules. So while that's happening, I'd like to invite Dr. Diane Jackson. Is almost Dr. Diane because she'll be conferred later this year, but she has successfully defended her PhD thesis. And so I'd like to invite her now, while we're gathering the remaining captions for the capsule, to share with us this poem to honour this very enjoyable and joyful and grateful occasion. Diane, over to you.
Silver Threads of Spirit, celebrating 25 years of postgraduate studies in applied spirituality in and from Ireland. 25 years of footsteps walking gently through the soul, a tapestry of seeking hearts where learning makes us whole. Here, wisdom meets the wonder, and silence speaks its part, a classroom in the inner depths, a pilgrimage of heart. We've studied light in shadow, found roots in sacred ground, listened to the quiet truth where stillness sings its sound. From every path of living, from doubt and deep desire, we've gathered sparks of meaning and dared to tend the fire. Now silver marks the journey, not an ending, but a door. The Spirit calls us ever on to grow and give and soar. So here's to all the dreamers, the teachers, guides and friends, for the gift of shared becoming that never truly ends. May the next bright 25 bring courage, joy and grace as we continue hand in hand to heal the human place.
So as we gather now to seal the capsule to be opened in 10 years' time, all going well, I'd like to thank Bernie. I'd like to thank Bernadette Flanagan for all that she has done. And all I can say is be very careful walking down corridors. So, Bernie, you come. Yeah. And Andrea, yeah. We're going to do it together as the Gaspard Cafe.
I think we have to invite them.
Oh, of course, yeah, come. Those want to photograph the closure.
Lunch is on the way. Yes. Yeah, works.
So you line it up here. Okay, well. Aoife will open the capsule in 10 years' time.
So, Michael, do you want to tell them lunch is on the way? Just maybe mention
Will
lunch.
you say it, Andrea?
Will I say it?
Yeah, you do so, yeah. It's time.
What time is it? Has anybody got a...
2:10.
9 minutes past 2. I'm 9 minutes over, which means I'm going to get into big trouble. No, it was already said, I think we're going to all continue the rich conversation and let's enjoy lunch together. And thank you, everybody. And let's continue on.